Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's talk today about something that means a lot, but can be a bit much. Overwhelm. Welcome back to Human Being with Dr. Susan. This is the show about the complicated, courageous, often unglamorous work of being alive. And today's episode is about something that millions of people feel every single week. Many people feel every day, and almost nobody wants to admit it out loud. Today, we are talking about overwhelm. Not being busy, not having a full calendar, not just especially stressful season. Overwhelm. Overwhelm is when life stops feeling manageable, when simple things feel strangely heavy, when one email feels like 10 tasks, or when your body is present, but your spirit feels underwater. This episode is here to name what is happening, understand it honestly, and help you to carry less. Some people break loudly, others break quietly. They keep performing, they keep helping, they keep replying, they keep smiling or saying, I'm fine, everything's fine, this is fine. Meanwhile, internally, they're flooding. That is overwhelm. It often hides behind competence until collapse makes it visible. Here's my story of collapse in plain clothes. Nervous to share this with you, but I am doing it in case it helps you think about your own experiences with overwhelm. I know overwhelm personally. There was a season where I looked capable from the outside. I was dependable, I was productive, I was helpful, I had good habits. I was the kind of person that others assumed was handling everything. We've talked before about the mask. Inside, I was carrying too much work pressure, private disappointment, an unhealthy need to excel, a fear of letting people down, and a sadness I kept renaming as stress. Then one day I sat down to answer a simple email, and I couldn't. I stared at the screen, my chest tightened, my mind fogged, tears came. Nothing dramatic happened. My body simply announced what my calendar had ignored. Capacity exceeded. I had mistaken endurance for wellness. Just because you can and you keep running and moving and showing up doesn't mean you're within capacity. Sometimes we're stretching and borrowing and taking advanced payouts on energy we haven't yet earned, learned, or discerned for ourselves. There's a difference between freeze and collapse. Most people know about the fight or flight reflex that happens in the face of stress, but fewer understand the difference between freeze and collapse. Freeze is a form of activated stuckness. I'm activated. My heart is pumping, my heart is racing, and yet I can't move. I'm anxious but immobile. I'm restless but unproductive. I'm mentally loud with noise, but I'm behaviorally still, frozen. Freeze says, I have to do everything right now. That's freeze. Now, collapse is different from freeze. Collapse is a shutdown, heavy, numb, detached, exhausted, hopeless. Collapse says, what's the point? Neither means failure. Neither that experience of freeze nor the experience of collapse. Neither means failure. Both are adaptive nervous system responses to overload. Your body is not betraying you, it's communicating. If you think about the movie Office Space, that fluorescent light burnout became a buzzword. You know the sound and sight and texture when a fluorescent light is on its way to burning out. Bzz, bzz, and it flickers on and off. It might look like it's working in between raindrops, so to speak. Or Ross in the show Friends yelling, "I'm fine," well, obviously not fine. Or in the wonderful movie Inside Out 2, when anxiety grabs the controls when pressure rises. And lastly, I was watching the show The Bear. The urgency, the trauma, the excellence, the tenderness, and the chaos all in one kitchen. These are examples of overwhelm. And whether you freeze or collapse, fight or flee, your body is saying enough. I was thinking about today, this national or international amateur radio operators day. You've heard of ham radios. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But cutting through the noise and getting enough of a signal to be able to get your message out there, that's where overwhelm comes in. When we start to flicker out and we just don't have enough to do anymore. And we either collapse right before the finish line, we freeze in the moment, or we fake it till we make it to keep going, but we are definitely not making it. And the guilt and conflicted feelings about faking it aren't worth the squeeze in those moments. So Oprah Winfrey, let's talk about Oprah Winfrey. She has spoken publicly for many years about burnout, boundaries, the cost of constant output. And her message has often been simple. Success without alignment becomes expensive. And that matters to me because many people think overwhelm only happens to people who are failing. Not so. It happens to people succeeding in unsustainable ways. Your body might be putting forth the energy you need in the moment to fake it. Your mind might be giving you all the cognitive resources that you need, even though you're overwhelmed, but your debt is piling up. And disease, the form of dis-ease, not having enough recovery or refractory time, eventually will take its toll. So Oprah Winfrey, from the outside, her life has often looked like the ultimate success story. Groundbreaking television host, media mogul, cultural force, billionaire, household name. And for years, she was producing daily television at the highest level, managing a company, carrying public expectations, making appearances, solving problems, leading teams, and staying on in front of millions. But she also speaks of how during much of that time, she was broken, overwhelmed, and paying a personal cost for that pace. Periods of exhaustion, emotional depletion, weight struggles tied to stress, and the danger of becoming disconnected from herself while meeting everyone else's expectations. Can you relate to that? Disconnected from self while meeting everyone else's expectations. That's why it looks so good on the outside. Oprah has talked about learning that being constantly productive does not automatically equal being well. And one of her major turning points came when she began speaking more intentionally about alignment, living in a way that matched her values rather than simply feeding momentum. She shifted from proving to discerning. from constant output to deeper intention. And here's some of the practices that she used to get to that alignment. Number one, saying no without guilt. What does that feel like? Protecting time for reflection, intentional time on her calendar for nothing but reflection. And not just putting on the calendar, and then when something comes up and you're looking at your calendar to try to find a pocket of time and you say, oh, that's not really a meeting, I'll just override that. Listening to inner signals before crisis hits, and prioritizing meaning over applause. That's been a hard one for me, if I'm honest with myself. The dopamine hit we get when someone appreciates or admires or respects or thanks us for something we're doing. So to shift away from that applause toward prioritizing what matters to you, golden. And finally, what Oprah did is understood that success can become a trap if you never pause to ask whether it still fits your life. That matters because many people think that overwhelm only happens to people who are failing. It often happens to people who are succeeding, but those unsustainable ways. Like I said, that promotion can overwhelm you. That recognition can overwhelm you. The role you prayed for can overwhelm you. The life that impresses others can quietly drain you. And the more impressed they are from the outside and depleted you are from the inside, the more that tethered bridge feels shaky. Sometimes it's a signal that something important internally is being ignored when you have those signs of overwhelm. So those signs or symptoms or signals of overwhelm, they're not always a signal that something is wrong externally. These are flashing emergency lights within that say, you are not listening to me, dear self. And one of the strongest people in the world may simply be the person willing to stop, reassess, and choose a healthier pace before the breakdown chooses for them. I remember taking a physics class in high school. Not my favorite. But one of the powerful concepts I walked away with is the concept of delta I. My engineer friends out there will understand delta I. The gap between who I am right now and who I think I'm supposed to be. So delta I in physics is about the increment of change required to detect that the change has happened. So for example, if I'm carrying a backpack right now and it has, say, 10 pounds in it of rocks, and someone adds a feather to the top of my backpack, no delta I, no meaningful, discernible change. But if somebody dumps a boulder into my backpack, I'm absolutely going to know it. I'm going to be knocked back. The problem with accumulative stress is that it is feather upon feather upon feather until we're overwhelmed. So that distance between where I am and that new feather of stress can feel small on some days. It's the space between. It's the parent you are and the parent you thought you'd be. The leader you are and the leader you imagined. The energy you have and the energy you wish you had. The life you're living and the one you thought would happen by now. I know you can finish this sentence for me. By now, I thought I would have finished my book, have taken that trip, have found the love of my life, have done something. And the gap, the delta I between where I am and the meaningful increments of what I need for change can become really heavy. And many people don't even realize that they're carrying this burden like a backpack. Inside that backpack, old expectations, comparison to others, regret over missed chances, pressure to prove yourself, shame about not being further along, whatever that means. That constant whisper, you should be more by now. No wonder you feel tired. Sometimes exhaustion isn't from the workload, it's from the identity load. You're not only carrying today's tasks, you're carrying yesterday's story and tomorrow's standards. And your backpack gets heavier every time you add, I should have known better. I should be happier. I should be stronger. I should be appreciative. I should be over this or him or her by now. But here's the turning point. You do not have to close delta I overnight. You don't have to close that gap between who you think you should be and who you are. You don't need to become an upgraded version of yourself by Monday. Sometimes growth is not leaping forward. Sometimes growth is removing stones from your backpack. Take one out today. Maybe release the timeline. Maybe release the comparison. Maybe release the fantasy version of you who never gets overwhelmed and always has it under control. Because the real you, the today you, deserves some mercy. And here's the paradox. When you stop dragging the weight of who you think you should be, you often become stronger, clearer, kinder, more effective. Not because you pushed harder this time, but because you traveled lighter. So here's the big question. What in my backpack doesn't belong to me anymore? That question can change a life. So this delta I concept of gradual load accumulation or cumulative burden is sometimes illustrated by sayings like the straw that broke the camel's back principle, or the game you played as a kid, don't spill the beans. That one extra bean is the one that puts you over the top and spills the bean. All of this is allostatic load. Allostatic load is the cumulative wear and tear on your body and mind caused by repeated small stressors over time. Not a catastrophic single event, but many pebbles. Hoarding doesn't happen overnight. It's one exhausted, I can't make that decision today at a time. One more responsibility, one more unresolved conflict, one more sleepless night, one more disappointment, one more demand. Allostatic load, the accumulation over time. And eventually the system strains under that cumulative incremental delta I load. Small added burdens increase total system load until capacity is exceeded. Compound stress effect. 1 + 1 + 1 can feel like 10 when recovery is absent. Allostatic load is the backpack getting heavier one pebble at a time. And you didn't break because of one giant rock. You got tired because life added pebbles to the backpack every day and nobody noticed the weight accumulating. So it's what you do with stress or disappointment or humiliation that matters. Remember that Buddhist principle of the second arrow. It's not what happens to you, it's what you do with the opportunity you have. So I had a wonderful conversation this week with a new person I met. Let's call him Josh. Josh is talented, capable, and moving fast. He is producing results, he's checking boxes, and doing many of the things that high performers are told matter. So from the outside, it looks solid. But then comes a moment he did not expect. His team engagement scores came back not where he would hope they would be. Not average, not mildly disappointing, but very upsetting. And it hit hard because it surprised him. He didn't see himself that way. He thought his effort was translating into leadership. He thought intentions were enough. And he thought being driven automatically meant being effective. But the feedback knocked him down. There's a special kind of sting when reality interrupts my story I'm telling myself, when the mirror shows something different than the image in our head. So Josh had a choice at this point when these negative engagement scores came back. Defend himself, blame the team, call the process flawed, dismiss the data, double down on old habits. This is what many people do. But instead, Josh let that circumstance humble him. He began asking better questions like, how am I showing up when I'm stressed? Do people experience me differently than I experience myself? When I'm connecting with someone, am I listening or waiting to talk? Am I leading through pressure instead of presence? And have results become louder than relationships? That painful moment became a turning point for Josh. He tuned in more deeply to himself. He became more aware of his tone, his pace, his impact, his blind spots, and he sought regular feedback on his blind spots. Tuning in more deeply to others, he was able to listen for what was not being said. He paid attention more to morale and trust and energy and signals beneath the surface than into just proving himself so that others would like or respect him. The score that embarrassed him also educated him. That is the lesson. Life isn't about what happens to you, because things are going to happen. Feedback happens, failure happens, embarrassment happens, unexpected setbacks. The real story is what you do with what happens. Some moments break ego, but build wisdom. Some of the worst report cards become the best teachers. Overwhelm. I found a story in the Bible that I wanted to share because it struck me as one of the finest examples of human overwhelm that I know of. This is the story of Elijah under the broom tree. It's 1 Kings chapter 19. So just before this moment, Elijah experiences one of the great victories in Scripture. He had stood courageously against the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel, called down fire from heaven, and witnessed a dramatic display of God's power. It was incredible. So you would think that this victory would lead to a sense of peace for Elijah. But instead, threat followed his triumph. Queen Jezebel vowed to kill him. He was overwhelmed. So Elijah ran into the wilderness, exhausted, afraid, emotionally depleted, and overwhelmed. And he sat down under a broom tree and said, I've had enough. This is one of the most human moments in the Bible. A man of courage, a man of faith, a man fresh off success, collapsed under the weight. And notice what God did not do first. No lecture, no shame for weakness, no try harder message. Instead, Elijah slept. An angel told him to eat. He rested again. He ate again. Then he was strengthened for the next journey. Only later came the deeper conversation and processing. There is wisdom here that many people miss, and that is that sometimes the most spiritual next step is not a breakthrough. It's sleep, it's food, it's rest, it's recovery, nervous system repair. Elijah thought the story was over under that tree. It was not over by any stretch. He was depleted, not finished. And later on Mount Horeb, Elijah expected God in the wind, earthquake and fire, but God came in this still, small voice that matters too. When overwhelmed, we often look for dramatic rescue. And sometimes help comes quietly instead, like one honest conversation, one night of real sleep, one meal, one pause, one gentle inner whisper saying, keep going. One episode of a radio show reminding you you're enough. So Elijah under the broom tree reminds us that even the strong collapse sometimes, even the faithful get tired, and even after victory, people can unravel. And finally, exhaustion is not failure. Sometimes it's simply the signal that you need care before you need counsel. I hope you've been following along with Artemis II these past couple weeks. There's a human story of overwhelm inside this space mission. When people hear about Artemis II, they think rockets, engineering, history, and the return of humans to the moon. They think courage, they think achievement, and they think greatness. What we often don't think about with Artemis II is overwhelm, because every monumental mission is a very human nervous system inside. NASA selected the Artemis II crew to do something extraordinary, to travel farther from Earth than humans have gone in generations, ever, and help reopen the path to lunar exploration. That crew, Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, and Jeremy Hansen. Imagine the emotional load on these astronauts. You're not only training for a mission, you're carrying symbolism for humanity, expectations, media attention, national pride, international pride, risk, family sacrifice, history, and the knowledge that millions are watching. That is a ripe recipe for overwhelm territory. But elite teams learn something ordinary people like us can use. They don't carry the whole mission at once. No astronaut wakes up and thinks, today I must carry the future of human spaceflight. That would crush anyone. Instead, they focus on today's checklist: one simulation, one systems review, one communication drill, one workout, one procedure, one debrief. That is how giant pressure becomes manageable. I want to write my book, and it's taking me years to do it. Focusing on that creates overwhelm. So lesson number 1 from Artemis is to shrink the frame. Shrink the frame. You're not living the rest of your life today. You're living this Saturday. You're not solving your entire career today. You're sending one email. You're not fixing every relationship today. You are having one honest conversation. With the Artemis II crew, they trust their team. It's not one heroic genius. It's thousands of people doing coordinated work. Engineers, technicians, trainers, medical staff, flight controllers, logistics teams. Overwhelm often grows where ego says, I should be able to do this alone. You know you've done it. I have done it so many times. I should be able to do this alone. But almost nothing meaningful is built alone. Lesson number 1 from our astronauts is to shrink the frame, the tiny task. Lesson number 2 in overwhelm is to borrow capacity. When your capacity dips, Borrow from trusted systems. Ask for help. Use checklists. Lean on routines. And let others carry part of your load. Accept the expertise around you, not as an exposure of your failure, but as a celebration of the village that it takes to launch your rocket into space. You prepare for fear, not the absence of fear. You prepare knowing that fear is going to come. Space crews are not fearless. They're trained. That matters. Many people wait to feel calm before acting. Astronauts teach us another model. Act with preparation while feeling normal human emotion. I love that. Borrow capacity. Prepare for fear, not the absence of fear. And then the third lesson from Artemis II and its crew is readiness beats mood. You don't need to feel perfect to move. You don't need enough structure to begin. You don't need your whole world to be built out as a setting in order for the story to get started. And you don't have to keep going back to the beginning of that story with shame to move it forward. So sometimes your life feels like a launch pad with pressure building, countdown noise, everyone watching, and so much riding on what happens next. But remember this, even moon missions are completed step by step. No one reaches orbit in a simple single leap. If Artemis II can reach space through disciplined small acts, you can survive this season in the same way. One checklist, one breath, one task, one day at a time. And when you're battling overwhelm, try to find music, poetry, something that you can step outside of yourself into the arena of the song or the poem to experience the forward movement that someone else has created despite suffering the same thing you are suffering. I was thinking about a song by Cat Stevens today, Father and Son, the opening lyric. It's not time to make a change. Just relax and take it easy. It's one of the most emotionally resonant songs ever written about overwhelm. That feeling of being overwhelmed by expectations and the tension between generations or people or identities or timing. That father voice urges patience and stability. Patience and stability. The son is longing in this song for his own freedom, and the father urges him to be patient and slow down. This song fits beautifully and captures a core overwhelm theme. Sometimes what crushes us is not the workload, it's living someone else's script. How can I try to explain? When I do, he turns away again. More in the song. From the moment I could talk, I was ordered to listen. That's the pain of feeling unseen. That's the burden of inherited expectations. And at the end of the song, he says, I know I have to go. That's his inner voice asking for change before collapse. That song still hits today, 56 years later, because many adults are still living as the son or daughter in that song, trying to please, delaying their own life, confusing duty with destiny, and overwhelmed by roles they never consciously chose. Sometimes overwhelm is not having too much to do. It's the exhaustion of being who everyone needs you to be. Let's slow down. Let's breathe. Let's not force the next chapter before we're ready. Abraham Lincoln carried the Civil War and personal sorrow, two heavy burdens. Winston Churchill led during war while privately battling depression. And Artemis II reminds us that giant problems become survivable when broken into specific tasks. So there's a term, it captures a modern source of overwhelm that is hiding in plain sight: consumption disguised as relief, consumer culture. There's a viral de-influencing moment. De-influencing. What does de-influencing mean? It's being amplified by creators like Katya Chesnock, who says plainly, you do not need another package from Amazon because you are bored. You do not need a new organizer for clutter caused by the last organizer. You do not need to go to Target to buy new shoes or a new notebook. Sometimes we don't have a stuff problem. We have an emotional soothing problem. We buy when we're anxious. We browse when we're lonely. We scroll when we're stuck. We bury ourselves over time under magazines we can't bring ourselves to throw away because we might go back to them someday. You're not going back to the stack of magazines on your table. Let them go. Try asking yourself before your next purchase, do I need this or relief? Do I own something similar already and I just don't have the energy to go find it? Will this purchase actually simplify my life or become more unmanaged inventory and source of shame behind the closet door? Some overwhelm comes from too much to do. Some overwhelm comes from too much to own. I was on the subway in New York. Everyone was staring at their phones. Everyone was carrying their bags. And everyone was somewhere between tired and determined. And it hit me suddenly. Every person in this subway car has something invisible going on. So I would look at person to person to person. I bet, does she carry debt that she's stressed out about? Is he heartbroken? Has she just been given a diagnosis, a dream, a parent aging, a child struggling, a secret loneliness? Everyone on this car has a burden they don't know how to name. So then this second clarity arrived. You've been on a subway when the car stops suddenly and the emergency lights come on, and you know you might be sitting there without air conditioning for a while. It occurred to me in that moment, maybe I'm not uniquely failing. Maybe I'm simply human among humans. And that thought alone reduced my overwhelm, because shame isolates. Reality reconnects. Shame dies in sunlight. Shame dies with words spoken. So what are your signals of overwhelm? And this matters because overwhelm whispers before it screams. Your signals may be snapping quickly, forgetting simple things, scrolling excessively, and waking up and saying, why am I looking at the healing structure of an elbow surgery that has nothing to do with me? Avoiding texts, tight jaw, or Sunday scaries, that dread of going into work the next day, messy surroundings. A messy surrounding is, in my view as a psychologist, the most significant indicator that you are overwhelmed and not okay. I don't mean the kind of mess that we should be able to, allow ourselves to have, like, a few clothes not yet put into the basket, or a few books not yet put back on the shelf, or a few bills not opened yet. But I'm talking about the kind of messy surroundings where you have to walk carefully to get to your bed, or you might kick one of the little mountains that you've set before you. Crying easily, fantasizing about disappearing for a week, and feeling resentment at ordinary tasks incomplete. So ask yourself, What does overwhelm look like in me before collapse? Knowing your signals is emotional intelligence. Ignoring those signals is expensive. Pay attention to your signals of overwhelm and what restores you, not what distracts you, not what numbs you. Mindless purchasing, mindless movie watching, although those things can be helpful in small measure. But what restores you, not what helps you avoid yourself for 3 hours. What truly restores you? That is a different question. Distraction can make time pass. Restoration gives life back. Scrolling may occupy you. Restoration steadies you. Shopping may stimulate you. Restoration replenishes you. Complaining may release pressure briefly, but restoration creates capacity. Right before you hit that buy button on Amazon, ask yourself, am I avoiding something that would actually bring me relief? Restoration creates capacity. Many people are overwhelmed not only because life is heavy, but because they confuse relief with renewal. So ask yourself honestly, when I am depleted, what actually returns me to myself? Maybe it's silence before anyone needs you, prayer, a walk outside without your phone, music that softens the chest, laughter with one safe person. I laughed so hard last night, my sides hurt. Spending time with two friends who are both going through a very difficult time. Organizing one small space, just opening your junk drawer and getting rid of those rubber bands that have been in there so long they've decrepitated and they're going to snap when you try to use them. Read 10 pages of something wise. Exercise that energizes instead of punishes. Water, sleep, sunlight. I am going to take a ceremonial sip of water right now, and I invite you to do the same. Making something with your hands. Being near trees, water, sky. Crying honestly. Saying no, even though you want to get on that plane and you want to be a part of that ritual you have enjoyed for so long, but you know that your body needs something different right now. Being fully alone for an hour, being fully loved for an hour. These are restoration actions and rituals that are often simple, but not accidental, and certainly intentional. You may need to protect that intentionality the way you protect meetings and deadlines and obligations and tax forms. Because here's the hard truth. If you only schedule output and never schedule replenishment, collapse will eventually schedule itself. So learn your list of restorative superpowers, those tiny acts of self-love. Write them down. Use them early, not in crisis. And remember, you do not need more ways to escape your life by going to Target or scrolling. You need regular ways to return it. And by the way, going to Target might be your replenishment if you do it with intention and knowing that walking up and down the aisles looking at the decorations will make you feel lovely. But doing it as an escape, as an emergency hatch, not often the thing you need for replenishment. So being International Amateur Radio Day, amateur radio experimenters were the first to discover that the shortwave spectrum, far from being a wasteland, could support worldwide messaging propagation. There's a reason why amateur radio operators are called ham radio operators. Do you know why? And in those early days, every station occupied the whole spectrum with its broad spark signal. Government stations, ships, coastal stations, and the increasingly numerous amateur operators all competed for time and signal supremacy in each other's receivers, the noise. And many of the amateur stations were very powerful. Two amateurs working each other across town together could effectively jam all the other operations in the area. So frustrated commercial operators would refer to the ham radio interference, and amateurs, possibly unfamiliar with the real meaning of the term, picked it up and applied it to themselves. They claimed it. Be thinking about the noise that surrounds you. Clear communication requires the right conditions. When there's too much static, interference, noise, signal competition, or anything interfering, important messages become hard to hear. And that sounds like your body today. We are drowning out the signals our body is trying to send us with notifications, with deadlines, with inner criticisms, fear, other people's urgency, unfinished tasks, and constant comparison. You are still receiving signals, but everything is distorted by noise. Ham operators know that you don't solve interference by yelling louder into the microphone. You adjust the system, you tune the frequency, you reduce the noise, you pause and listen, use shorter transmissions, wait your turn, and repeat only what matters. So what noise do you need to clear out? What inputs are unnecessary? What constant alerts could you step away from? What notifications on your phone do you not really need? Like Hilton has extra points if you spend, $1,000 this week. The reason why ham radio operators were called this name, it was derogatory. It was a ham-fisted jab by professional telegraphers to amateur radio operators, saying, "You're creating noise, get out of the way." You can embrace that label by choosing what you put in your way. Right now in my life, what is signal versus what is noise? Signal may be health, family, purpose, values, one key project. Noise might be endless opinions, performative urgency, comparison, physical clutter, random demands. Signal versus noise. And remember that many of us are exhausted because we treat noise like signal. The truth is, sometimes you don't need more motivation, you need better tuning. Your life may not be broken. You may be simply trying to hear yourself through too much static. Here's a poem, Wild Geese, by Mary Oliver, to help with overwhelm and to distinguish signal from noise. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. For the overwhelmed perfectionist, that poem is medicine. You don't need to earn belonging through exhaustion. Wendell Berry has a beautiful short poem. It's called The Peace of Wild Things. When despair for the world grows in me, I come into the peace of wild things. That poem reminds us that nervous systems regulate in contact with what is not frantic. Trees, water, sky, silence. I invite you to a meditation moment. Take one slow breath in through the nose and a long breath out. Again, breathe in slowly and breathe out long and slow. And now say silently to yourself, There is a difference between me and what I am carrying. Again, there is a difference between me and what I am carrying. And now imagine setting one heavy rock from your backpack down, just one. You do not need to carry everything today. The opposite of overwhelm is not simply having less to do, it is capacity, space. And as you take that last deep breath, think about the healthiest opposites of overwhelm. Spaciousness, not every minute spoken for, not every demand urgent, not every thought crowding the next. Steadiness, you may still have a full life, but be grounded inside it. Tasks exist, but they don't own you. Clarity, knowing what matters now, what can wait, and what doesn't belong to you. Overwhelm says everything matters equally and urgently. Clarity says, no, it does not. A beautiful message from God. His grace is sufficient for me. That sufficiency is an internal sense of, I have enough time for this moment. I have enough strength for today, enough support for the next step. Allow your nervous system become regulated, because calm is the emotional opposite of overwhelm. Order is the structural opposite of overwhelm. Capacity is the functional opposite of overwhelm. And peace is the spiritual opposite of overwhelm. You can choose these things to matter over others. Because the opposite of overwhelm is not emptiness. It's having enough inner and outer room to meet your life well. My last question for you. When was the last time you felt the opposite of overwhelm? And that answer may reveal exactly what you need more of now. If you want to read a book about overcoming overwhelm, I recommend The Untethered Soul. It's a brilliant book about separating yourself from the mental chatter that often intensifies overwhelm. So in summary, overwhelm is what happens when life exceeds capacity. But healing begins when you notice the load, ask for help honestly, and set down what was never yours to carry. And if this episode met you where you are, please share it with someone carrying too much in silence. I hope you'll subscribe and follow and send a session to the friend who says, I'm good, a little too quickly. And remember, you don't have to master a meaningful life. You just have to make the next right decision. I'll see you next Saturday and every Saturday right here on Sandcastle Radio, America's hottest online variety and music station. Yeah.